Monday, March 23rd. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight, we kind of cop out and talk about science from high school, mostly chemistry.
Let's do this. No work tomorrow. Oh, yes.
Oh, what? Sick day or just vacation day?
No work the next day either.
Two
Or
vacation days?
possibly not for a while.
Laid off?
I don't know. Laid off, fired. I don't even know. Because it's sort of weird because it's like, well, they weren't doing too well, so they couldn't afford to keep me around. But at the same time, I was also showing up late and leaving early as far as they were concerned, even though it was no later or earlier than I had showed up prior to them having troubles, you know?
So did you get any, like, severance pay, or they just, like, walk up, get the fuck out, in the George Carlin method?
It wasn't get the fuck out. It was just like, you know, sorry to see you go, yada, yada, you know, the spiel. And,
Maybe this had something to do with, you know, hey, Scott, you got to put more on the table. Bring more to the company. You know, what do you have to offer us?
and then I didn't.
Wasn't your answer?
They're like, we need more from you. And I'm like, I can't really give you more right now. I'm like, can you wait till I move to the city? Then I give you a little bit more. It's like I can't give what you're looking for. So I don't know if it counts as laid off or if it counts as
fired,
insubordination or whatever. Technically, I don't know. It's, you know.
See, I don't know how that works. I've never been fired.
I was fired once at RIT.
Well, RIT doesn't count. I didn't technically get fired from DeBellis.
I worked in these two offices in the art building, the student services offices, because the art building had two different ones. And then in the summer, I stopped working at one and worked almost exclusively at the other one. But then the person who used to work at that other one, they came back. So then I left there and I got fired from there.
That's not fired. That's laid off.
I immediately had to go to the scheduling office, whereas where I worked, which is much better. First of all, it's a much higher profile job for more money. Yep. And I worked there until I left RIT.
The closest I ever got to being fired, like actually fired, was DeBellas, when basically they asked me if I was quitting because they weren't sure.
Yeah, I don't know.
That
Maybe
day when I didn't wake up, like I remember my alarm went off and I had to be up, like I had to go there at 7 a.m. and chop onions, and I just went back to bed.
The thing is, if I quit, you know, it's like I could have said, no, I quit, right? If I quit, I definitely can't get any unenjoyment monies, but I think I can't tell, like...
Did you say unenjoyment?
Yeah.
That was pretty good.
Everyone says that.
I've never heard that before.
You've never heard that?
No.
It's always called that.
No, I've never heard it.
I've heard it a million times.
Huh?
Anyway.
I never have. I'm being honest here.
All right. You know, it's like I looked at all the requirements for what makes you eligible, right? So on the New York State website, it says, first of all, you know, if you were fired because you were insubordinate or whatever, that you can't get it, right?
I don't think that's the case in your situation.
Well, I don't know. It depends. You know, that form that I signed, you know, they like checked off 3 boxes, which were like, you know, not showing up to work when we want you to. So I guess it kind of is.
They had a form?
Yeah, there's a form I had to sign. It was like, you know, this is why we're firing you. Sign it.
You could have just not. I don't know how that. You could have just not signed it.
Well, signing it basically says, yes, I have seen these forms. Yes, I know what they mean. It's one of those. It's not a. Well, I agree. I will be. You know.
I remember when I left IBM and they made me sign like 10 different things.
I signed a lot more shit when I quit than when I got fired.
But the funny thing is, I remember I'm going through all these papers and I liked my manager and I was doing it all in good faith, and I signed the non-compete, and I signed the NDA, and I signed the non-headhunter stuff because, you know, I was nice. But I remember at one point I asked my manager, like, so do I have to sign these? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, no, really? Like, do I have to? What if I just didn't? What are you going to do? And she was like, I don't know. I guess I'd just take your badge the same as I'm going to do, and we're done with this.
But yeah, no, you know, so I took all my stuff. I sent a little email, you know. It was very unexciting, but it was definitely a better experience than quitting the previous job to come to the current, most recent job. Because I pretty much, when I quit that job, they were like, "Oh, bye." Oh. It was like, what? And I didn't even have a chance to like talk to anyone or anything like that, you know?
It's weird.
At least this one, I got to be like, bye.
'Cause I remember
see you around, keep in touch.
when I quit the hospital, it was
email.
like I gave him a month notice. Like, I'm going to quit in a month, expecting.
Oh, well, at the hospital, you didn't seem like you had anyone to say goodbye to.
Nah. Well, there was one cool guy.
The only reason I didn't quit this job is because there were like a few people there who was still like, hey, what's up?
There are two cool guys there. One cool guy was my manager who worked for like 2 weeks and then quit.
No, but I mean, these are some of these people I've been working with, 2 years. It's not like,
Nah.
Anyway.
But the only other cool guy at the hospital quit after I'd worked there for about a month. And I remember the email he sent out was like, so long and thanks for all the fish. And I was like, yeah, you were cool.
Yeah, no, but the other tech guy who was the only tech guy, he's still there now. He's up in Massachusetts, so when we go to Anime Boston, we could probably, go do lunch with him or something.
Ah.
Be a good time. He likes good food. He's not one of those.
So maybe it's time to work on stuff.
It's definitely time to work on stuff. I'm gonna finish some this week. I'm definitely finishing one thing. As soon as that's done, I got something else in the pipe that I'm gonna make.
It's in the hopper?
It's in the hopper. It'll probably only take me 2 weeks to get something that works, right? And does like the minimum I need to put it up and maybe put some ads on it, try to make some money. And then I'm also, of course, simultaneously going to look for actual safe jobs at the same time.
Yep.
And then, as long as, stuff is cool, we'll see where it goes. And that'll be that. Gotta, can't be sitting around being a bum, right?
But apparently that's what they want you to do to get unemployment.
Right. So I don't know if I'm eligible because, first of all, was I fired or was I laid off? I was kind of fired. So I guess I'm sort of can't, right? But also, it says on the New York State website, if you're working for yourself, even if you aren't making any money, you're not eligible. So it's like if I start working on something, I mean, sure, they won't know. They won't have any idea. But technically, right, I'm working on something.
I don't know, but I mean, what's the difference? What if you're working on open source stuff? Is that a job?
Well, no, it says it says if you're working on actual work for you.
It sounds like that only applies if you actually, file your taxes as I am a self-employed individual.
Well, I guess they wouldn't know if I didn't file the taxes, but, I might file the taxes if something works out in the next, month or two. I might have to file the taxes. I would like to file the taxes very much. That'd be very nice. Actually, it wouldn't be very nice because I have to pay some accountant to do it because I'm sure as hell can't do it for myself. If it's anything more complicated than, the simple stuff, which I already do.
Well, if anything, I'm working from home, I think, on Wednesday, so we can go to the Kaibo.
Oh, Kaibo lunch on Wednesday?
Yeah, and Jess is hanging out around, too, so we can grab her.
You're going to have to pay for me. I can't. No more Sapere for Scott.
Yeah, but see, I could buy you lunch, but I'm kind of eyeing that Eclipse across the street. I
went and looked at it. First of all, that Eclipse across the street was not an 07. It was
no 03.
It's an 03, right?
Yeah, but it's real cheap.
Well, it's a V6, which is nice, right? It's got
good condition.
It's got leather seats, which is nice. The condition looks okay, right? But I'm sure, at least it's better than your car. I mean, the air conditioning will work and such. And
plus, Scott, $8,000.
You think, was it really 8? I thought you said it was 12.
No, he was like, it's 12-ish, but we can be really, really negotiable. So I emailed him back today, and I was like, yeah, so seriously, 8 or 9? And he was like, yeah, probably.
I mean, if it's for 8 for a car just to, replace your piece of crap and keep going.
Thing is, I was looking at it because when I was driving my car the other day, right, I got back from the train station. I got to the train station.
I mean, it's not perfect. It's not that car, that's not a car that's like, oh man, it's awesome. But, why it'll hold you over long enough. You take care of it.
Thing is, I was only looking because the other day I got home to the train station. I get in my car, I turn it on, I pull out, and the car goes.
You're gonna try the car. The Sunfire is gonna explode. It's gonna happen. So the engine's just gonna fall out the bottom.
As I'm driving home,
just like the other.
There's smoke coming out the exhaust. The car's making these screaming noises, and I can't tell. It's either the power steering or the transmission, but I can't tell unless I get out of the car and fiddle with it. And I'm driving home. I got stuff to do, so I just keep driving, trying to guess.
So how did you get to the train today?
Well, I drove the car like that, the next morning, and then that night, finally, I drove around with Emily, and then I came home, and I went over to that parking lot by the auto parts store over there, And
The AutoZone, yeah.
I drove it around slowly in a circle with the hood open, like walking next to it, turning the wheel and listening and looking and listening and looking. And I figured out, all right, something's wrong with the power steering. Definitely not the transmission, which was a shock. So I stop it and I look and I see that there's like oil and burn all around the power transmission fluid or the power steering fluid well.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's where the smoke's coming from too. So I take a rag.
Where there's smoke, there's fire.
And I twist it to open it, and the top pops off, and all the power steering fluid had like burned away.
Are you supposed to like not open that?
No, you can open that.
Okay, because
Don't open the brake fluid.
There's stuff like you're not supposed to open, and other stuff you're only supposed to open when it's on, and other stuff you're only supposed to open if it's off.
Yeah.
And other stuff you're only supposed to open if you're a professional.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's like-
Basically,
It's like the thing I don't understand is the stuff you're never supposed to open. Why is it openable?
so the mechanic can open it.
Right, but if the mechanic can open it, they should have a special like thing that doesn't even look like it's openable, except to a mechanic. You know?
Yeah, but at the same time, the scary warning is enough for most people. It was enough for me. I can say that.
That's yeah.
Like I had my Sunfire at
So
deck
did you
school.
buy some power steering fluid at the AutoZone and just dump it in?
Well, I dumped it in. I also dumped in some because I found a leak too. So I dumped in some power steering fluid leak stopper.
So speaking of cars, right? So my car has, it's an '06. I just paid it off, which is good considering I have no money.
Yep.
Right? It has these like strips of molding on the doors, right? And a piece of the molding sort of chipped off when I opened the door one day, and I was, so I'm trying to figure out what to do about it. So I finally realized, I went to the dealer. The dealer was closed. So I'm like, well, what do I do here? I went and I was like, hey, I'm stupid. I went and took a picture of it. I went to the Mazda forums and I was like, hey, what do I do about this? You know what they said?
What did they say?
Surprisingly, everyone was like, pretty much everyone in these forums takes those things off.
Really?
Yeah, no one leaves them on. They're like, and everyone hide all these pictures. Like, look, here's my car with them off. I took them off. They look stupid, and why should you have them on there?
Huh? You're taking them off?
Well, the thing is, to take them off, the guy gave me directions, right? Basically, what you do is
you
first...
rip them off.
No, first I gotta wait for it to be warm, right? That way the adhesive will be gooier, right? So
Hair
I can't.
dryer? You can take a hair dryer to it, I guess.
I could do that, but that's a lot of work, right? So wait till it's warm, right? Then get some fishing wire and just sort of go behind it and whoop, right off, right? But then there'll be all this adhesive still stuck to the door. You got to go get some Goo Gone or some 3M adhesive remover or whatever, and they have some that is specifically non-damaging to auto paint, whatever. And then you just use it and get all the goop off, and then you just have a door that's perfectly clean. And then I guess I should probably like wax the car or whatever after you do something like that, But whatever. That's what I'm gonna do when it's warm.
Nah, well, we'll see how that goes. Take some
I
pictures.
certainly have free time. It's not a problem.
So I suppose we should talk at least a little bit about the iPhone OS 3.
Yeah,
We can't avoid it. It's Monday. Much like how Twit has to talk about
Twitter. Oh, the twit today was so bad.
Just talking about Twitter and tweets.
Oh, they were talking
tweeting.
about Twitter and like stupid Jason Calacanis. The guy is doing his bad Christopher Walken impression. It's like they're not talking about technology anymore. It's become like a just like a tech celebrity.
At least they didn't
like
talk
fuck fest.
about Spin Right again, did they?
They talk about Spin Right on security now.
Yeah.
It's
I don't know. The only podcasts I listen to anymore are Anime World Order and Dave and Joel.
Yeah, I just remember when Twit used to talk about tech, but on the other hand, I kind of like Twit going in that direction because it means, hey, let's just do the Twit thing. Twit's not doing it anymore, so we can walk right. It's like if Cartoon Network stops showing cartoons, there's room for us to come in and show cartoons because they're not showing them.
Well,
right?
maybe we'll switch up the Monday format. Just do a Tech News Roundup every
time.
week.
Real Tech News Roundup.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
but no, you realize if we do that, then after a year, we're just gonna have to talk about nothing but Twit.
Oh.
Yeah.
And anyway, the iPhone 3.0. First of all, just so people know, right? All they did was make an announcement of what the iPhone 3.0 software is going to be. They didn't actually release it, right? So it's probably going to come out this summer, and it's very likely that when it comes out, there will be another iPhone, a new iPhone for it to go on, right? And so that way, all the people who bought the very first iPhone, their contract runs out in the summer. So they will probably buy the new iPhone, right? And I can see what's going to happen here. is we're very likely going to see new iPhone software and new iPhones like every single June or July, whatever the month is.
Forever.
For as long as, that continues, right? Because that way, everyone who has, their iPhone contract expires, then they just migrate over to the newer, better one every 2 year, 2 year contract. Do, right? And that's what they're gonna do.
Brilliant.
It's business. Hey, there's a lot of features. You can read online what they all are. Some of them are pretty exciting. Some of them not so exciting. Depending on what you care about. I mean, a lot of the features are really for developers more and not so exciting for users, like the ability to buy stuff from within an app, right? That's sort of good because now when right now you go to the iPhone App Store and it's like you'll see like such and such program light, such and such program not free, right? And the light one is free. So you go and you get the free one, and then if you want the real one, you got to go back and pay for the other one and delete the free one. Now it's just going to be like, hey, you can buy stuff in the apps. That means you could buy a game and then buy levels for the game from within the game. Or you could go and download a free demo, and then from within the free demo, buy the actual game.
See, I don't know. It's good in one way, but at the same time...
It's good for the developers who are making mad bank. Maybe I should... You want to give me $100? I could buy the iPhone dev kit. Maybe I won't need to get a job.
Suddenly I have to fund everything you do?
I have no money.
You got savings.
I got a lot. I can't use it. I got to be the cheapest possible Jew.
I'm buying like a house and stuff. My thousands of dollars are going elsewhere.
Well, it's all ramen for me. The only thing that I'm actually sort of, excited to see is like the notifications, which it's like, well, if we can't have background apps, notifications sort of make up for it. It's like, hey, if I can just have all my IM clients and the thing will beep whenever I get an IM immediately, but I don't actually have to keep it open with the IM app on the whole time. That's sort of good enough, right? I mean,
yeah, but will that hurt the battery?
The way they're doing it,
the batteries don't last that long as it is.
That's true, but they're doing it in a certain way that shouldn't hurt the battery as much. Where the the company that makes the app sends the things to Apple server, and then Apple server sends me the updates. And it shouldn't hurt the battery any more than Exchange push, right? It should be about the same. And I heard something about CalDAV support, which might eliminate the need for Google Sync on the calendars and such. There'll be a lot more calendar goings on, which is very, very good, if that is indeed true. There's also the copy pasta, which everyone was excited about.
But you shouldn't be excited. That's like if they released a game. Like, I don't know, they made Mario and they put it on the iPhone.
And there was no jump button. And then later they added the jump button.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
No, and then they rumored the jump button, but wouldn't admit whether or not it was going to be there. And they told people they didn't need the jump button. And then eventually, they released the jump button, but only if you buy Mario 2.
Yeah.
Which doesn't have a jump button.
Well, the thing is, the copy-paste, it's like just the way the iPhone works and the way I use it. I mean, I would use the copy-paste sometimes, but I wouldn't really use it that much. I mean, what am I going to use it on? So where am I going to copy and paste, I
guess it's just one of those basic things
I might copy and paste like a URL from an email, but it highlights the URLs so I could just touch them. So what?
Yeah, I guess more useful would be if they'd included copy paste by default, but instead they included by default some sort of annotation system for everything. I don't know. I got a lot of vague ideas.
Well, they added the Spotlight search, which is pretty much you can search everything on the phone from one screen,
which is a good idea.
That's not bad. It's sort of what the Pre is doing a little bit, right?
Oh, the Pre. I'm kind of feeling the Pre.
I was feeling, well, the Pre, the thing about the Pre is it's going to be it's weird because the iPhone is going to be more like Windows and the Pre is going to be more like Mac, right? Because what the Pre is going to do is all the built-in stuff on the Pre is going to have like awesome syncing. Suppose if it lives up to the hype, right?
Yeah, it may or may not. This is Palm's last gasp.
It's going to have like all this awesome synchronization with everything, and everything's going to be like web stuff, and it's going to be that has a big potential to be pretty much everything I could possibly want. But the iPhone with its App Store, even though the App Store is got a lot of problems, there's just so many apps. And it's so widely supported, just how Windows is Windows is not that great, but everything is for Windows. So it's like everything is for iPhone. What you want might not be for pre. So even if the pre is better in and of itself, the way like, Linux is better than Windows, if it doesn't have all the apps, it's like, well, I can't, do the thing I want because no one made it for the pre, even though the pre is better. It could be
But
that
at
kind
the
of
same
situation.
time, much like Windows, while there are a few killer apps that you need Windows if you want to use them, the majority of the software out there is garbage. And I mean, look at the iPhone apps. We talked about that
90%,
story
yeah.
a while ago where most people, if they buy an app, use it for maybe a couple weeks at most. And
The
then they
thing is,
just
I
stop.
went through and deleted like almost all the apps on my phone except the ones I actually use. And I keep even deleting more and more and more. And I mean, after this update, I can actually see myself using less of them. The only ones I think I would actually use are I still use the Remember the Milk, right? And I would use them. If Meebo comes out with that app, which apparently they're going to, I'd get that, and then I'd cancel my text messaging. And then, I don't know. I think that'd be it. I mean, really, what else? I got the web browser on there, and the email, and the calendar. And that's sort of, that's sort of the thing, right? Is the pre does all those things. So, yeah. All right.
Yeah. I don't know.
My contract, I still got, another year. So, like, this coming update is mostly, it'll make the remaining year of my iPhone experience much better. And then, it'll help out the people who got the original iPhone and their contracts are up now can get, probably a new iPhone and the new software, with the subsidization and renew their contracts. And they'll be happy if they still want to stick with the iPhone. And then, in June 2010, I'll definitely have a job or be dead by then, or homeless or in Detroit or something. There's no way I can go that long.
Yeah, just buy one of those $500 houses in Detroit.
It's an option,
I know people out there. I can get you guns.
I don't need guns.
You'll need guns.
Listen, there are plenty of options. I mean, there's Foreign Legion options. There's Peace Corps options. There's plenty of options. I could go volunteer for some African thing. It's plenty of shit I can do. All right? I'm not in any sort of.
Well, Foreign Legion's not an option. You have to be able to do a push-up.
I'll just do something. I'll just do push-up Legion first.
So the economy's bad. I remember it was interesting when I looked at this car and then I talked to the car guy and I was like, yeah, how are things doing with the economy the way it is? He's like, you know what? Used car sales, skyrocketing.
Really? Because you'd think that,
New car sales, nada. And basically what he was pointing out is that used cars, because in America, I don't know how it is in the rest of the world, but pretty much if you buy a new car, it's brand new and it's exactly what you want. And 5 minutes after you have driven it off the lot, it's worth crap. It's lost enough of its value to where economically, I mean, ignoring the comfort benefits of knowing that you have a brand new car, buying a used car, like a 1-year-old car, saves you stupid amounts of money here. Just because of the nature of the market in the industry.
Well, what it has is you have a situation of exponentially diminishing losses, right? Assuming that the car stays working and nothing bad, it doesn't break, right?
Basically,
when a car that's 1 year old is worth a lot less, is like thousands of dollars less than a brand new. 2 years old is worth a lot, significantly less than a 1 year old. But as soon as you go on, like a 5 and a 4 year old car, not so much different as, the difference between those two cars is not anywhere near the difference between a brand new one and a 1 year old car, even though it's a 1 year difference. So buying a car that is brand new is, if you look at it as an investment, it's pretty stupid but if you look at it as I'm buying what I want something new, then it doesn't really fucking matter. It's sort of like people who buy a house. Yeah, people who buy a house to invest and people who buy a house to drive, to live in. I drive my Winnebago. Yes, I was not totally flubbing.
Well, there's also the new Pixar movie.
That's true. That's not driving though. But no, so if you buy a car to drive, maybe new is the right choice if you can afford it, you know?
But at the same time, I don't know. I feel like the American car industry is already having a lot of trouble, obviously. And I feel like one of the biggest problems is that they do this thing where every single year they make like a new model of every car.
Yep.
And this was driven by the way our economy worked and the fact that people are constantly buying and leasing new cars.
See, that's sort of like the fundamental. See, that's a lot of people are talking about this, is that there are sort of fundamental things that people sort of accept as that's the way it is because that's the way it is, and it seems like it's a law
And
of the universe, but it's really not. Why does a car company have to make a new model every year?
And how come they have to make every model slightly different? Like the 1997 Miata was a beautiful car. It was an amazing car. I love the 1997 Mazda Miata. So why did they have to make it crooked slightly so in 1998? And then crooked slightly so again in 1999? I mean, what? The only reason they got away with that is because the economy was such that people were driven to buy new cars, pun very much intended, and the used car market was like this secondary side thing. But suddenly the economy's bad, and people notice that they can get a car that's just as good as a new car for $5 to $10 grand
Well,
less.
I think actually, lemon laws have had this, because cars, didn't used to be so long lasting.
Well, that's the other thing. I realized that
Lemon laws have forced people to make, even if you buy the cheap, crappy brands, or if you buy a Hyundai or a Kia or, a brand of car that is...
Kia's not that bad a car.
Well, no,
them.
that's the thing I'm saying. Is like, these are, brand, the impression people have of these brands is that they're lower quality, right? They cost less. They don't have the fancy features. It's not like a Mercedes, right? And a Mercedes will last you like 25 years, right?
Well, Mercedes aside.
Right, but
everything else.
But I'm saying is, it's the even the cheapest cars from the crappiest, the lowest end cars. They're great. They'll last you a long time. Even if you buy like a cheap ass like Chevy Aveo, it'll last you a while.
What I've noticed talking to people and looking around is that in general, older people are more likely to consider a new car first or be distrustful of a used car. But younger people seem to be more likely to buy a used car, not just for economics, but I feel like it's perception because in the 80s, there were cars that were just lemons. You could buy a brand new car and it just sucks already. And you could buy a used car that, after a year, the car is basically worthless because it was a lemon. But that doesn't happen anymore, as far as I can tell, at least. I mean, my Sunfire lasted forever, and I traded it like crap. And as far as I can tell, all Sunfires last forever, and then they'll have the same problems mine has 10 years down the road.
Yeah, and your car still works.
Yeah.
As long as you don't get in an accident or have, some random breakage or something like that, as long as you change the oil and such and maintain it minimally, just about any car is going to work for quite a while. And, a lot of the used cars out there, right? Like my grandma, right? She leases a Toyota. And then she just gives it back and gets a new one whenever, because it's just a constant cost for her. It doesn't change.
Yeah.
So she's like, why not just go put back the lease and get the newer one? I can always have the great. I can always be driving a new one.
I'm still kind of looking at leasing because I used to drive a lot. I used to put
if you don't mind paying the same price forever, that's a great option because you always get the pleasure of a brand new car.
I used to put 50 to 70,000 miles on my car every year. Like, I used to drive a lot.
Now you drive a lot less.
Now I put maybe 9,000 miles.
In my first year of
car.
ownership, when I worked in the middle of nowhere, I put like a bajillion miles on the car, like 30,000. Since then, I've put like 10.
Like now, the majority of the miles I put on my car this year were driving up to Hunter Mountain skiing 4 times.
Yep.
That was more than
the majority of my miles are like driving to Connecticut and conventions. That's it.
Yep. And those are all like, trips, and we don't drive to Seattle, so.
Nope.
But, I was thinking about that. Why don't I just lease? And every 2 years, I get a brand new car, and I pay like $300 a month for the rest of my life.
Right, but think about this, right? Those cars that my grandma leases, gives back, and leases a new one, those are used cars now. That 1-year-old, 2-year-old car that my grandma drove, you can just lease. You can buy that guy, and it's way cheap. And it's just fine. My grandma drove it for 2 years. It's perfect.
The point of all this is that I feel like there's going to be an even bigger day of reckoning for the car industry of the world, and I think it's going to be precipitated by the Tata Nano.
Okay.
You know about the Tata Nano? Because this was rumored like 5 years ago. I remember
Tata is like a Tezuka character, I think.
People were talking about how, India, there's this company working on like $100 car. And it'll
I thought it was China was working on like a $2,000 car.
China, India, but there were a lot of rumors about, China or India or a nation like that is going to make like a couple $100 car. And it'll just go, just barely. And it's so cheap that you can just buy 10.
Mm-hmm.
And it's finally come to fruition. The Tata Nano is $2,500 and is a perfectly street legal car. And it looks
in the United States?
Well, in India to start.
Oh, okay.
But it looks like it's going to be made available in Britain.
Is it 4 wheels?
It is a real 4-wheel car.
How big is it?
It's 5 seats.
Also, it's a size of a sedan.
It is a real car.
It's a 4-door car.
Well, yes, it's the size of a European sedan.
Oh, okay.
Not American sedan.
No, but it's a 4-door. It has 4 doors.
Yes, it is a real car.
Is it front wheel drive?
Yes.
Is it how big is the how big is the
All right,
engine?
here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a 624cc 2-cylinder 33 horsepower engine.
So it's a motorcycle engine.
Here's the thing. It weighs so little. It still goes 0 to 65 in like 17 seconds.
Even with 5 fat people.
Well, the thing is, fat people won't fit in this car. It's made for India and then eventually Britain. Of course, Britain is actually fatter than the U.S.
true.
per capita.
Yeah. I guess if you had, light people, that would work, right? But
even then, for city driving,
does it have air conditioning? Does it have?
I think so. I didn't read all the details. Yes, it has a radio. But here's the deal: it is a car that goes. It actually goes. It looks like it's reliable enough. It looks more reliable than Hugo was.
Well, it's real easy to fix, too. It's like a motorcycle, right? It's got a tiny little engine. You could, if the engine explodes, big deal. It's a 2-cylinder. I'll just get another one off this, like, Harley that's,
It averages 60 miles per gallon.
And plus, this would actually be a great car to buy, like, a high school kid, because he's probably just going to drive himself in it, right? Or, and they could totally mod it to hell, because it's so simple.
Yeah, but the fact that they can make a car that goes just fine for $2,500 retail, and yet
a good car to send to like Cuba,
and yet in America we make a new model of every single $10,000 to $40,000 car every single year, and now people can't afford to buy those cars.
Yeah, I really just the fact that cars last so long. We don't need new ones. We have enough cars for everyone. We can just use all the cars we have, and until the point at which someone wants a car and the car they want is not available, then we're not going to need any more new cars until then. And looking at how many cars are sitting on boats, sitting on docks, sitting in factories, we just don't need anyone to make new ones until the ones we have break. It's like the reverse razor blade model, right? Imagine if Gillette made razors that lasted for 5 years. Well, eventually every dude would have one.
Well,
and then what is Gillette supposed to do? Everyone's got one.
Actually, a famous old parable about that. The candle maker, who was such an amazing candle maker that he invented a candle that never burned out.
Whoa.
Ever.
He sold a candle to everyone, and then he was out of business.
Yeah, that's the parable.
Yeah. So what do we do about that?
That's what we do about it.
It's best for the world if the candle maker makes that candle, but in a capitalist society, right, with free enterprise, no one would ever make that candle and do what's best for everyone and make that awesome candle or the car that lasts forever because they wouldn't be able to make any more money.
The real issue here is that America's economy in particular in a lot of places really relies upon this inefficient, make new cars constantly model, assuming that people will buy them. And now that people aren't buying them, and now that people are buying foreign cars too, it all comes together. And there's just too many cars.
So here's one solution, right, would be to set up the system such that, right, let's say I invented the candle to last forever or the car that never broke, right? If I'm able through, to receive enough compensation for that to live a life of luxury until I die, then that sort of works. I have the incentive to make that, right? Because even though I'll sell one to everyone and be done, I'm fine.
Well, Scott,
the problem is a lot of people and there are not enough things for everyone to do.
Well, no, the much more pressing issue is that in the real world, forget the stupid candle maker, industry and the economy if we don't make these cars constantly, what are all the people who work in the car factory supposed to do?
All the people in my candle factory are fucked.
I don't know what to do about it, but I feel like the economy kind of bringing this day of reckoning onto the car industry, plus the fact that the super cheap car actually came to fruition and is eventually very likely going to spread into the U.S. I don't know what's going to happen.
I can see, that fundamental question we keep asking and never getting answered, that can only be answered by the invention of the replicator or, diamond age type technology. I think is actually starting to have a real effect on the real world and everyday lives.
Well, what do you do when the only reason we have an economy, the only reason we have almost every problem in the world is because there are scarce resources, and we have to decide how to distribute those scarce resources, and at the same time, there's an amount of work that needs to be done to get those resources. So how do we distribute the work? And technology has gotten us to the point where it takes so little work on average, to get most of these resources, that there's not enough work for every person to do. But we base our distribution mechanism on how much work people do.
And there's nothing else. What else can people do to deserve the resources other than work?
We base our system on either how much work you do or how much work the person who then gives you all of their money does. But that's a whole different problem. So
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, this is basically, we're slowly coming across something that is on the same scale as the Industrial Revolution. And that caused decades upon decades of massive social upheaval.
I don't have a job. I'm ready to upheave.
You gonna upheave?
I can upheave at any time. Call me, Scott, available for upheaving.
Is this gonna be the end of your streak?
What do you mean, my streak?
You haven't upheaved in many moods.
No, I upheaved. There was the show about it. It was a few years ago, I think.
I listened to that again when I was going through the archives.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, things of the day. I'm a fan of the beers, and I actually...
The beers or de beers?
The beers. You know, the beers.
The drinking kind, not the wearing kind?
Yes, not the wearing kind, and not the you can't be a kind.
Okay.
But I didn't know much about India Pale Ale. Other than that, I see it all the time. And then I found this article...
I know there is such a beverage as Pale Ale.
Talking about some company who was trying to recreate what India Pale Ale used to really taste like.
I should you know what? I should fuck doing all this computer work. My new company, I'm going to recreate the Gros Michel banana.
The Gros Michel.
I'm going to go to botany school.
But anyway, actually, I've got this crazy idea because I'm looking at houses, and that bar down the street's for sale, and it's got like a house apartment connected to it, and I don't think it's that expensive. I asked, to check it out and how much it is. I have this vague idea of buying it, moving into it, telling Pete to quit his job, telling him to come down here, paying for his food, and all he has to do is cook for me and brew beer. And if he succeeds, I will open a brew pub. And if he fails, I will never open the bar, and I will just have my own private bar.
Listen, do me a favor. Don't move anywhere until I have some incomes, because I can't afford to stay here alone.
Well, if I buy a house, I guess you could pay me rent. I guess I could loan you if you can pay me back on Tuesday.
I can pay you back when I get money.
Anyway.
And if I can't pay you back, I'll run away to Detroit or something.
So beer was on the mind, and apparently, from what I can gather from this article, India Pale Ale was made the way it was so that it would survive the horrible, horrible ship journey to India. And as a result, it had a very distinct flavor, partly because the barrels were treated like crap, and it got hot and cold, and they get washed overboard, and stuff would seep and
So
leak.
are they just making some pale ale and then putting it on a boat and sailing it around and then bringing it back?
Yes!
Oh, it's
That
awesome.
is exactly
Yeah.
what they're doing.
That's awesome.
Now, I find this awesome. However, I was like, that's interesting. So based on the assumptions from the article, I went to Wikipedia, and I was like, Wikipedia, tell me about India Pale Ale. And the facts between this article and that article don't line up, and I have no idea. So
okay.
I don't know.
Here's the first question that came to my mind, right? Is that okay? If in the olden days, right? If the India Pale Ale was meant to last the trip to India from, say, Europe, right? Then if they want to take it on a boat and bring it back, are they going to go halfway to India and come back?
Yes, they're not taking.
Or are they
going to
make it in India and then bring it up?
The article talks about that, actually.
Oh, okay.
How long it's going to be out there, but
to be really genuine, you'd have to have the drinkers on the boat. Or else it wouldn't be the same.
Well, genuine is a fine line. I would say this would be an interesting experience.
It's like manga that reads in the wrong direction.
I don't know. I like the idea of making things the old way just to see what they were like, even though the old way is often not better.
Or at least approximating it, or at least, possibly being closer to the way it was.
Like that time when I made grog, and you discovered that grog tastes terrible.
Well, rum tastes terrible.
Rum is delicious. Grog is terrible.
It tastes like cough medicine. Pretty much all alcohol tastes either like cough medicine or rubbing alcohol.
You've never had good alcohol.
Anyway.
Or you have a low tolerance for it. But I thought this was neat.
Yeah.
I don't like India Pale Ale that much, to be honest. I'm more of a, I like Kirin, I like Japanese Pilsners.
I wouldn't know if I liked it or not, but I bet it tastes like either cough medicine or rubbing alcohol.
Anyway,
so I talked about the thing of the day, I think, a while ago, about Love, which is a game building engine with the Lua language. There's apparently someone out there making a game called Love, which has nothing to do with the game engine called Love. So this is completely different, right? But it's also called Love. And it's some sort of like Water is Poison has been hyping it up to me. And while I'm very skeptical of it, as I am skeptical of everything, there is some interesting stuff going on here. He's making some sort of like MMO FPS. It's very free form and allows you to do all sorts of crazy stuff with like 200 people per server and sort of introversion style graphics.
See, what bothers me about games like World of Warcraft, all these like MMOs, what people play.
So even if this is probably just going to have the same fundamental flaws as other MMOs in some way. But at least they're trying.
If they try to make it massive, because in the end, I'll complain about.
It doesn't look like they're trying to make it massive. It looks like they're just trying to make something that's a little bit more than Counter-Strike, but is actually
that's massive. Because here's what I'm thinking about. I complain about grind and all these other things, but really, what bothers me about MMOs is that the idea originally was that you can have multiplayer games. 4 people or 8 people, gaga, in a deathmatch.
Yep.
But the MMO was like, what if we made a game that has like 100 people all at the same time? And MMOs started going in that direction, and then for various very good and very bad reasons, became so parallel that they're not really massive.
Yeah, when you play Counter-Strike or Tribes, let's use Tribes, right? There's 60 people on the Tribe server. You're interacting directly with every one of those other 59 people. That's like, the same way you're interacting with the one other person you're playing chess with.
Now, even if not directly, you are indirectly in the context of the same stateful world having an effect that could be seen by the other people.
Right.
But just they don't make...
In an MMO like WoW, there's a whole bunch of other people's avatars around and you can look at them, right? But you're very, very few of the people are you ever actually directly connected with in that way. Like if you go into PvP in like a battleground, whatever, only the people in that battleground are you connected to, not the thousands of people on the server.
Well, very simply, the difference is that most MMOs became very parallel very quickly. And as a result, they're still, they're big games, but they're not, I almost wouldn't want to call them massive games because they're not quite there. They're more like a giant ready room and a giant exploratory room.
Yep.
But then separate from that, this massively parallelized game that people play. But this, I don't know, this could do something cool.
Anyway, so this Love game seems to have some potential, and the person who's making it, I think his name is Eskil Steenberg, has some interesting things to say. And people who don't realize this, the Game Developers Conference is like now, tomorrow-ish. By the time you're hearing this, it's probably now-ish, right? And this guy is going to give a talk at the Game Developers Conference Tuesday at 4:45. So it's, I guess, if you're listening to this on the Tuesday, March 24th, 2009. That would be, today at 4:45 in room 304. He's giving a talk, and he put basically a longer version of his talk in text with pictures on his little blog here. So you can read it. And he says a lot of interesting things about game development. But the one thing he's saying that I have noticed has been true in all development of software recently is his emphasis on making tools, right? And I've noticed this trend for like a few months now, and I really think that there is something going on here, right? And basically what's happening is look at Twitter, right? Twitter was a feature for audio. That's where it started out, right? It was a tool for audio that audio people made, right? And then they gave up on audio, and Twitter became the real thing. Django, the Python web framework that I'm using, it is awesome. Was it just a tool? It was just, the guys at the Kansas City, whatever newspaper it was, made this thing that they would build the Kansas City newspaper website on top of it. And then it, was a tool that went on its own and became this bigger thing. Ruby on Rails, that 37 Signals company, I think. I think that's the right company. Well, it was just there, right? And
you see this trend in science and technology forever where you have a lofty goal, but you have these very real world concerns in the way of that lofty goal, and you want to solve them efficiently and quickly to get onto your lofty goal. And as a result, you're going to make all these awesome tools.
And some people buy tools. Some people just do it without good tools, and they just get it done crappily.
Get her done.
And some people out there actually are nowadays making, when they have something to do, they make the perfect tool for the job, and then that makes the doing of the actual thing they actually wanted to do real easy and wonderful. And the thing is, the tools themselves can often grow and be so awesome that, in fact, those outgrow the thing that, are more successful than the actual thing you made. And he's talking about how, if you do make tools, you should release them publicly because that will force you to maintain them, to give them features that you wouldn't have thought they needed. Other people will use them, and you'll have all these people out there using your tools for their own purposes. So now there's all this talent out there that you can hire to work on your own stuff because they already know your tools. And I think there's going to be a big emphasis on tools, and especially as the line blurs more and more between, tools, being things that make, right now we sort of view it as a tool is something you use to make something that someone consumes, right? But we're reaching the point where the things we consume are tools and we use tools to make them. And I think there's really going to be a huge blurring and eventually no distinction whatsoever between a tool and a thing you consume. Your making will be consuming very much. You get all the user generated content, right? Or when you play Rock Band, you're also making a performance. Not only is it a tool of consuming the music, it's also
Granted, it's all degrees.
I know it is definitely degrees.
Because I know people were thinking, oh, it's not performance, play a real guitar.
There are definitely degrees to it, but it's going to blur more and more as time goes on. Little big planets, and
when you think about it,
it's going to blur in the other direction too. Photoshop is going to become more and more thing for people to entertain themselves.
Well, no, when
with.
you think about it, it's a lot like the efforts for heat reclamation in engineering, where humans, as in the course of entertaining themselves, will more and more create things as byproducts of their own entertainment. I think this has much broader social implications.
Even watching a movie, you're forming an opinion, which is itself a work if you choose to write it.
But now there are tools like the internet where by watching a movie, you then blog about it. You've now created a separate work. Then someone else, I don't know, makes a techno remix
comments
of your
on it,
blog post, right. And then that techno remix turns into...
So, he's talking about making tools. I really think this is something that you really have to think about. If you're making something, even if it's not technology, if it's an arts and craft or an art or whatever, right? And there's a tool you need, right? Where did the hammer come from, right? They didn't make the hammer and the nail first. Some guy needed to hold something up on the wall, so he made the nail, and then he needed to get the nail in the wall, and then he made the hammer. And then everyone else said, "Oh man, look at that hammer."
I'll let that one go.
Yeah, you can let it go. But you see, the tool comes after the job, right? So when you're doing something, whatever you're doing, if you need a tool for it that doesn't exist, or there isn't a perfect tool in existence, make that tool and share that tool. That is the best thing you could possibly do to have a very high chance of success.
Here's a better piece of advice. If you are the kind of person who is funding other people doing things, like you're a venture capitalist or whatever, find someone with a lofty goal, set them on that goal, and offer to fund them. But take the rights to all the tools they make along the way.
Yeah, look.
And that's where the real money will be, and then let them have their project that's not going to go anywhere.
You just have to make sure that they're making tools, right? Look at Valve, right? Sure, they make Half-Life 2. In the course of making Half-Life 2, they made the Source engine, which has been much more valuable than Half-Life 2 itself, So that's the way to go.
So when I was in high school, I'm going to call him, I don't want to use his real name because he might be out there somewhere if he didn't die already. But I had a friend in high school. We'll call him Donnie Don't. And
don't do what Donnie Don't does.
What Donnie Don't does. And one anecdote about Donnie Don't. I remember hanging around in the physics lab of high school, and we're doing some sort of physicsy thing. But
is this Al guy?
This is Al guy.
Al guy.
So we needed a bunch of really high molar hydrochloric acid to do what we were doing. So we had a fume hood, and under it, we had very, very, very concentrated hydrochloric acid. And the physics professor walks out and says, all right, now, when you're all taking your sample, keep it away from your face. Whatever you do, don't inhale the vapors.
Not even if you waft it?
Because you'll probably pass out.
Not even if you waft?
Won't be good for you.
Wafting is no good?
No one asked about wafting.
Okay.
And As he says, you'll probably pass out, Donnie Don't says, really? And proceeds to pass out.
Did he drop the beaker on the ground and
Yes.
smash?
It was a tiny beaker. He didn't.
Oh, okay. So I was like, if you're holding a beaker, you sniff it, and then you drop it, can land on your foot, and
Yeah.
you're passed out, and acid is burning your foot.
Well,
It's-
I did once spill an entire jar of somewhat weak hydrochloric acid all over my pants.
did it burn?
Not really, because it
Did
wasn't
you,
that
did
strong.
you use the shower?
No, I just took my pants off.
Was your legs wet?
They were a little wet, so then I wiped them off with paper towels, and then the teacher said, Rim, wear your pants.
What did you do the rest of the day? You didn't have another pant at work at
Actually,
school, did you?
I did.
You had another pant?
I was in marching band. I had like a whole locker full of clothes.
You put on marching band pants?
No, I had like a pair of jeans in my band locker. I
So
just,
you walked down to the band room with
Well-
no pants on?
me being in boxers was not an uncommon occurrence in high school.
In the hallway in high school?
Ah,
I mean, in the house, I understand. In the high school, in the hallway?
I feel like this is turning into an anecdote for a different show.
Perhaps.
But I don't know. Chemistry had some of my fondest memories in high school, even though I never actually took a chemistry class.
Really? You never took a chemistry class?
Not in high school.
Wow.
I took chemistry at the local community college, and I skipped it in high school so I could take physics instead.
Huh? I took chemistry in high school. I took honors chemistry in high school.
Ah.
Teacher was a funny guy. There was quite a few, he was one of those teachers that had character.
There's something about the high school chemistry teacher who, because they can tell which kids are smart enough to be given dangerous stuff to play with.
Mm-hmm.
They can always tell. I mean, I remember when one day, I'm not going to use any names, a certain chemistry teacher was like, all right, you kids in the AP physics class, I found this and I think you'll enjoy it. And he handed us a box, and in the box was a cube of wax, and inside of the wax was lithium.
Uh-oh.
We had some fun with that, let me tell you.
No, but the high school chemistry teacher, I remember him now, man. He had this toupee, and he made everyone call him Godfather, and he would always give you the lab, right? And then he would teach you the chemistry afterwards. So it's like you do this lab, and it would have all these questions, like, do this math, how much was there in this? And it's like, you didn't know how to do that. No one taught it to you. It wasn't any book, right? And then after you did the lab and he graded it, then he would teach you what you needed to know for the lab. That was the thing.
That's probably a good way to go about it, because if you know what's supposed
And
to
then
happen in the lab,
he was
you're
also
gonna-
famous for like yelling at the class, like but like you'd be like an angry tirade kind of yell, and everyone be quiet and like, oh shit. Oh,
He
shit.
didn't throw the erasers, did he? That's more the physics teacher.
No, he didn't throw anything. He would just yell and get all pissed off, like whatever. Yeah. No, but actually, all the awesome, in high school, there was good chemistry going on, some, Bunsen burners and whatnot. But it was in summer camp, actually, that the most awesome chemistry happened. Because I went to a science nerdy summer camp.
Well, isn't the summer camp pretty much the I've got some sodium and there's a lake?
That's pretty much what it was. I remember 3 things specifically that we did. One of them I don't know. I can't remember the science. I just remember what we did. No, I remember 4 things, right? So here are the 4 awesome chemistry things at summer camp, right? Awesome thing number 1, they mixed some chemicals together. I have no clue what they were nowadays, but it's like it started off as like a small pile of powder, right? And they would pour something onto it or add something else to it, I forget. And then it would sort of like sputter like a volcano. And I think it changed like yellow to green, I think was the colors. I don't remember, but it changed color. And it would erupt and erupt and erupt and erupt. And it would just be like this pile of powder would grow and grow and grow and grow. And it started off as like this little tiny pile, And it grew to like be like really tall compared to what it started out as. And I have no idea what the hell it was, but it's really, really impressive. And, if you put that like in a jar or something, you could probably freak someone out big time as, it looks like a little powder in a jar. And suddenly the jar is full of shit. We threw sodium in a lake. Good times. We had like this big jar full of oil. In the middle of the jar of oil was like a block of sodium. And they would take it out and they would slice, chunks off of it and toss it in the lake and go, boom. And we joked, we thought we would put it in someone's toilet, in the upper deck.
No one ever did, though.
There was a rumor going around.
There's always a rumor
thing
going
is,
around.
I thought about it, and I looked in the upper deck of the cabin toilet.
Was it already upper decked?
It was solid black in there.
Ah.
So I was like, damn.
Nothing's worse than it's upper decked by course of nature as opposed to by mischievous
Right.
child.
So I looked, and I was like, wow, if we really did put sodium in the toilet, and the toilet exploded, and basically the top of the toilet is completely black, that would be something mighty fierce. That would be so fierce.
Yeah.
So fierce.
Well, I remember the most trouble I ever got into was because, I never took chemistry in high school or middle school because I took it all at the local community college, but I did a lot of chemistry in the course of Science Olympiad, and most of it was barely supervised. But I remember specifically we had to make this like Rube Goldberg machine for Science Olympiad. And
and use the chemical energy, yeah.
Yeah, we had to, like, you got points for going from one kind of energy to another kind. So we wanted to have a thing where we had a clear liquid and a laser going through it, and then the liquid becomes opaque due to a chemical reaction as opposed to a physical reaction, blocking the laser, and then something happens. And we came up with all these ideas that were all technically physical reactions, like dilute something in the water and then the turbidity increases and then the laser doesn't get through.
You just get food coloring or some shit.
But that's a physical reaction. That's not a chemical reaction.
You could use an acid and then you could use like phenolphthalein solution.
Now we were debating and we tried all these things and they were either too dangerous, they didn't work, or they weren't good enough, or they
iodine, something.
But that wouldn't be a physical reaction
with
most
starch.
of the time.
With starch, you put some starch in the water and you drop some iodine in there.
But it because the water part is not intrinsic to it.
No, but the starch part is.
Yeah, but then they would probably argue, and other people tried similar things, they would argue at the event that the turbidity or the opaqueness was caused primarily by the physical reaction as opposed to by specifically a chemical reaction.
Oh, if you didn't put the starch in there, though, wouldn't have turned as nearly as dark.
Yes, but if you put the iodine in, it might have turned dark enough anyway. They were real sticklers. So we're working on this and debating, and then finally, I'm just like poking through, and I find the 11th grade chemistry textbook laying there. And on the cover, 2 clear liquids are being poured into each other, and they're turning bright, opaque yellow.
You sure it wasn't just a Photoshop?
So we go to the physics professor, and we're like, what is this reaction? He's like, fuck if I know. So he goes over to the chemistry people, and they're debating, and they're looking at it, and they eventually called the publisher, and they found out what it was. And
2 very dangerous chemicals.
I forget exactly what it was, but it was some sort of mercury compound and some sort of
very dangerous chemical
and some sort of lead chloride thing.
Makes sense.
So we're like, can we do this? And they're like, well, it's not for really a school event. It's kind of out of school, so go nuts. Here's the key to the chemistry lab. Stay away from the lithium. So we put it together and it worked perfectly until we blew it up because we were stupid. And we got disqualified for creating a dangerous situation. But that's another.
That's great.
That's another story.
All right, let's see what the other. Oh, actually, I remember even more for that summer camp. They had some uranium. It wasn't uranium. It was uranium something or other.
Not I forget
it wasn't
all the
just
things,
uranium. It was
I forget
uranium.
all the things you can find uranium in.
Yeah, they had. It was like uranium something-ide or something-8. One of those. It was uranium mixed with something.
Yep.
And they would it was in a little lead box or whatever in a jar in a lead box. But they would open it up and take the Geiger counter and be like, look, tick, 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 tick.
We did that. Actually, my mom used to collect, and I believe still collects Fiestaware.
Oh, well, that's pretty good.
Plus, but
that's not as radioactive as this uranium was.
Well, my mom actually, she used to be really into mineral science. So she actually has this gigantic collection of samples of almost every mineral that is acquirable. Little sample. Some of them are dangerous. Some of them are radioactive. Obviously, nothing like plutonium, but she has a fairly pure piece of uranium. And a Geiger counter and all this cool stuff.
Yeah. So they had, we threw cesium in the lake, right? But what they had...
Cesium?
No, that's sodium.
I was going to say, that's quite some fun with the cesium.
No, they talked about cesium.
Well, because, you look at the periodic table and you're like, sodium, what's under sodium? And you're going down the line, and the further down you go, the bigger the explosion is.
That's right. No, they had, what they had is, they had like all these, they ordered a jar full of sticks of phosphorus, right? And for the bonfire, they would put a stick of phosphorus like down low where no one could see. And then they would most of the kids didn't take the chemistry, very few people did. So only the kids who took the chemistry knew what the score was. So they would tell like some Indian legend, and they would throw a glass of water on the pile of wood and it would start on fire. And like half the kids would be like, oh shit.
Brilliant.
It was pretty brilliant.
Of course, with phosphorus, did you ever get to do the thermite reaction in school or the summer camp?
Oh yeah. We made contact explosive, but it was very weak. It's like you would squeeze it and go.
sadly, we never did anything cool with thermite. Everyone always talked about, what if we took thermite and melted a hole through all the bleachers? Oh man.
Not
or
a good.
in the middle of the football field.
Way to
all
get
the way down.
way to get expelled.
But no, the most we did was put it in a flower pot and melt through like a sheet of metal.
Yep, that's about it. Oh, the other thing we did is we would like turn on Bunsen burners, and then we just throw like different metals into the fire and watch the color change. Like,
I did that in the course of Science Olympiad because one of the events was they give you all these like samples of different chemicals and different metals. And the event was, here's a metal. There are 20 things with 20 different metals. Identify them all. You've got 5 minutes. Here's a jar of acid. Here's a Bunsen burner. Here's like a bunch of pieces from the Mohs scale. Go nuts.
Mm-hmm.
You just got to figure it out. So, put some acid in, set it on fire. I was terrible at that event because I couldn't memorize any of that stuff.
Yeah,
for crap.
memorizing was the hard part, but it's like you would throw it into the fire, and the fire would turn green. So you're like, aha, that's the green one. You throw the iron filings in, and it would
Yes,
spark.
but as far as I would get is that's the green one that melts in this acid.
Right.
Right.
That's the problem. We had labels on them, so we knew it was basically a reverse. It was like, this is iron. What does iron do? It sparks. And it was sort of, learning about fireworks, because that's how fireworks do, is they start a fire, and then they have, if they want to make like the white sparkly bits, they put iron in there. If they want to make the green sparkly bits, they put that other one in there. I forget.
I was curious if you were going to say which one.
I forget. I only remember iron. I don't remember the other ones.
Actually, some of my favorite parts were making the labware because we always got to make our own labware, especially in the local community.
Oh, I
college.
never made labware. It was always just get it from the shack.
Because in 10th grade, instead of taking the lame-o science in school, I went and took stoichiometry, and then I was done with that, and I went back to the school, and they were like, that didn't cover everything. So I'm like, damn it. So I went back and took Argo. And that was when I realized that I hate chemistry and everything about it. Organic chemistry was the most horrifying experience I've ever had. It was nothing but doing lab experiments that don't work and smell bad.
Really? I did, organic chemistry. I only took one class of it at RIT, and it was sort of like, a 101 type
Every
class.
lab was take naphthalene and do something stupid with it under a fume hood.
I actually had, some pretty fun labs. We only had to do the fume hood on, like, the lab where we actually made plastic. It was actually kind of shitty plastic. It was more like rubber cement.
We didn't do stuff like that. We got right past
but
the
all the,
hydrocarbons.
actually, the stuff we learned was not so exciting. I wasn't super interested in it. It wasn't that difficult, probably because it was just a 101 introductory type class. But the labs were actually kind of fun because A, my lab partner was sort of competent, and B, all the labs involved like that sort of, they looked like mad scientist shit where we'd have like a beaker on one end and then like all these pipes, held up on, with like the big sticks with the metal holders, and all sorts of like, the glass tube that gets bigger and smaller again. And you would watch the chemical go like up, swirl around, go down the other side. We did all that sort of shit. And that was,
See, I remember
it was cool to feel like a mad scientist with the chemistry
It was
set.
fun when I'd go and check in to like do a lab because I'd skip the lab class. Then on the weekend, I have to like go over there and do my science stuff to not fail this class that the high school was paying for me to take. So I'd be hanging out over there, like working on my lab. And I remember one day there were these 2 kids who just obviously went to the community college as their college as opposed to just, taking classes there.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No, but they just made a still.
Oh,
And
on purpose?
Yeah, and then they just left with it.
Oh, they just took the school's equipment and left?
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, because you had this breakage card, you had to buy it for like $50, and then at the end of the year, you would take it over, like you get signed out of your cabinet, and then every time you broke something, they put like marks on it, and you get whatever money back from stuff you didn't break at the end.
Oh, see, a lot of the labs that we did, I remember at the RIT Organic Chemistry, we didn't make a still, as in to make beer and ferment.
You don't make beer in a still.
But we did.
You make liquor in a still.
Oh, but we did distill things.
Yes, well,
not alcohol. Usually something else. We would.
Yeah.
And we would have to like measure the molar before and after and stuff and that kind of shit. And,
Of course, I remember I got in trouble. I got bored one day, so while the lecture was going on, I silvered every piece of glassware in my cabinet.
Occasionally I would get silvered or partially silvered pieces of glassware, but I never silvered anything.
Well, I silvered it all, and then, a couple days later, I'm doing my lab, and the guy's like, what happened to your lab equipment? And I'm like,
oh yeah, I remember. Like we one of the things that we threw into the Bunsen burners to change the color of the fire was silver nitrate, and then our hands were like marked. We got until like the end of the summer.
Yeah.
My hand had silver nitrate on it.
But I remember the lab instructor's like, you didn't do that to all your lab equipment, did you? And I was like, well, what if I did? He's like, it's pretty much irreversible. And I'm like, oh, that's good to know. He's like, you sure you didn't do it with all your lab equipment? I'm like, I got a breakage card.
I definitely did.
I didn't get any money back for my stupid breakage card.
Oh well, that's all right.
Actually, sadly, all my really cool memories are from physics. We tried to make a Betatron and it didn't work.
Man, physics, the physics labs I've ever done were always the sort of, drop a thing off the side of the table with a string attached to it and a pulley and a little calculator measuring device, or make a little circuit and use a multimeter and measure it, and that sort of shit. We never really did anything cool.
Oh, we had a fun. We actually did the lab where
all the cool stuff. Like the teacher would already have a Tesla coil. You wouldn't make one, or he would just turn it on and be like, "Look, this is a Tesla coil." Ta-da!
That was.
You'd be like, you already have a Van de Graaff generator. You never made one. He's just like, "Look, I have one. I turn it on."
I don't
for
need
one.
to tell it. I think I've told it many times, but. Donnie Don't and his interaction with the Van de Graaff.
Yeah, he'd be like, look, this is my bell jar capacitor that is made with a 2-gallon jar. We are not going to fill this up. He's like, once the teacher in the room next door was playing, the like 1 pint bell jar capacitor was sitting on a table, and the teacher next door picked it up. He's lucky to be alive. He said it felt like a sledgehammer to the chest. Stuff like that. But we never made one or charged one up or anything like that. Just here, we have one.
But
See it, learn it.
Like the one I remember most, because we actually calculate, what we'd always do is we do experiments that were done famously back in the day to try to calculate gravity or try to calculate how far away the sun was. And we try to do it experimentally. And then the quest was, see who can get the answer. Like we'd always have the award for who got the most accurate answer and who got the most precise answer. And very rarely did the same person get both.
Yeah, definitely.
But the most fun, we actually did the Cavendish experiment. There's the lowercase g gravity constant and the uppercase g, the gravity constant.
Yep.
We did the Cavendish experiment to try to calculate the uppercase g. And we got it to almost a decimal point. I was so proud of that.
Yeah. Man, we didn't do anything quite like that. I think once we did the take extension cords and whip them around like jump ropes to make electricity.
Yeah, we did that too. Well, I remember we did it, and they were like, stand north to south and whip it around. Now stand east to west and
we
whip it
actually
around.
jump roped while they were connected.
Yep. We made fun stuff.
Yeah, I wish I had some free time. I could do science. Oh, wait.
Oh, got some free time,
Too
don't
bad.
you?
No one will pay me. Not going to work out. I can only do things that make money.
Scott, I'll give you $5 if you can recreate the Cavendish experiment.
Not enough.
It's not that hard.
It's going to take, I need more. You need to give me all the resources, and I need at least a minimum wage for the time I'm spending.
Nah.
At least, if not more. My time's worth a lot more than that.
I don't know. This was kind of a cop-out episode. And
We found some excuse for science. We didn't have any tech. We had an idea that bombed.
Yeah, we were like, hey, why don't we look for funny job listings on Craigslist and just kind of go through them live and talk about what they say, what they mean. But there was nothing. That well was empty.
That well was very much empty.
I got to the bottom and there wasn't even a scary ghost down there.
Nope. So, send us some Monday show ideas.
Other than the ones you've already sent us, those require effort, and we're holding off.
Something that we don't need to research or put bunch of effort into.
Of course. If Twit keeps talking about tweeting, then we'll just have to switch to the Twit format, and that'll be into that.
No, let's not. Even if it becomes a possibility. Maybe we should do we've never really done a Twitter show, have we?
I don't think so.
Maybe we should do one, just to be like, this is the one, and we'll never do it again, Because then we can spend half it bitching about it.
It amazes me. I don't post on Twitter that often, but every now and then I'll post one thing, and then I see 20 people reply to me, and it's like,
it's like I did it, I tested it. We'll save it and we'll do a Twitter show.
And then I'll talk about Spin Ride, and then I'll talk about my book. I'll talk about my blog, rim.org/blog.
Yep.
This has been Geeknights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music.
Be sure to visit our website at www.frontrowcrew.com, where you'll find show notes, links, our awesome forum, a link to our Frapper map, and links to all the RSS feeds.
We say feeds plural because Geeknights airs 4 nights a week, covering 4 different brands of geekery. Mondays are science and technology. Tuesdays, we have video games, board games, and RPGs. Wednesdays are anime, manga, comic nights. And Thursdays are the catch-alls for various rants and tomfoolery.
You can send us feedback by email to geeknights@frontrowcrew.com. Or you can send audio feedback via Audio. Just click the link that says Send Me an Audio on the right side of our website.
If you like what you hear, you can catch the last 100 episodes in iTunes or in your favorite podcatcher. For the complete archives, visit the website, which has everything.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 2.5 license. This means you can do whatever you want with it as long as you give us credit, don't make money, and share it in kind. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.